Do you have the language to connect what you're physically feeling to an emotion? And equally as important, do you have the language and understanding to connect an intellectualized emotion to the actual physical feeling? Meaning, if you're someone who knows logically why something is wrong, is aware of what happened in your life to get you to this point, and knows what the right answers are, but hasn't actually felt progress, then maybe this is a place to start too. Because it's important to be able to say, hey, I'm feeling or experiencing A, B, or C, so if I'm feeling that, then this is what this emotion might be for me. And it's important to be able to say, this is the emotion that I'm having, and this is how I know I'm feeling it. And I've let myself feel it. Hi, welcome to the first episode of the first book in our book club series. If you haven't seen the video about who I am and why I started this book club, check it out. Again, I'll start this book off by giving a disclaimer that when it comes to mental health and therapy, it is highly individualized. So with these videos and content, I want to give a disclaimer to make it absolutely clear that this is not me as a therapist or social worker telling you what to do or giving official therapeutic advice for you in your situation. I want to share ideas, concepts, skills, and hopefully introduce something new into your world. I highly encourage going to a therapist or licensed professional for advice and treatment. This is not a replacement or equivalent for professional help. Here we'll read together, reflect together, while painting together, or enjoying some hobby together. So, that being said, let's dive in. This is the book, Atlas of the Heart by Brené Brown. This book is available in any book retailer. I encourage you to click the link in the description to brenebrown.com, the author's website, where all purchasing options are listed and linked. The website also has further discussion, worksheets, and resources that may be helpful for the reading as well. There are worksheets with research citations, one with a list of emotions discussed, another one called Empathy Misses that are discussed in the book, and there's also a discussion guide. These sheets are all free to download on that website. This book was published in 2021 and is about 250 pages, counting only the numbered chapters. It was written by Brené Brown, who is, as quoted from her website, a researcher and storyteller who spent the past 2 decades studying courage, vulnerability, shame, and empathy. She has her PhD and master's in social work. She's a research professor at the University of Houston, a visiting professor at the University of Texas, and is author of 6 #1 New York Times bestsellers. She has a couple of podcasts that I will link as well so you can take a look. I've listened to a lot of those episodes. They're very insightful and another great resource to turn to. Brené Brown is a social worker that I have just always looked up to, in a way just because she's fairly direct and passionate when it comes to this work, and I like how she paints the picture and relays her understanding and research in ways that are very relatable. She has a pretty popular TED Talk and other videos regarding shame, vulnerability, and empathy that I love. And I'll link those as well, but I'm sure a lot of you have heard of her before. We'll probably be covering a lot of books from her because she has a lot of great resources. For me, I'm an annotating girl. I will scribble, write, note, draw, bookmark whatever I want in my books. Although it's not a big deal, it's something small that I do to help combat my own sense of perfectionism. I encourage y'all to make your mark on your books for what resonates with you. Questions you want to explore further and points you want to remember. To me, it feels like a different way to continue the literature and make it for yourself. You'll hear me say this a lot, but emotions and experiences can be felt so differently from person to person. And I feel like when you take a book or literature, you have the ability to build off of it and continue the story into something that becomes personal. Almost like the author gives you the story and foundation, and then you get to give it the meaning and the continuation, right? Because the book and the story only lives on because of the readers. If you're reading this book for you, might as well continue to craft and tailor it for you too. Now, with all that being said, let's really start our dive into this book together and start with the introduction. I love reading the introduction to books and getting a more foundational understanding of what the author has to share and where the literature is coming from, state of mind, the research involved, the author's backstory, and their intended purpose. I highly encourage y'all to read her story. She shares her personal and environmental history and how that has helped to shape her journey in her research and this book. She goes on to say that we'll cover about 87 emotions and experiences in the book, which I don't know about you all, but I don't know if I could name that many emotions and experiences off the top of my head. But as Brown explains, creating this list of emotions to talk about, I think that it's really important to emphasize how complex it is to label, measure, research, and study human emotion. There's so many perspectives that can be considered and so many nuances in how people experience them individually and environmentally. And I use the word environment as an all-encompassing term for someone's surroundings and influences, including the people, culture, geography, socioeconomic status, living situation, law, policy, really anything that has influence on an individual on micro, meso, macro level. This really stems from what's called person and environment theory, which basically says that when looking and understanding someone, you have to look at both individual and internal factors and environmental and external factors. And just within different fields of study, human emotions and how they are defined and explained vary from discipline to discipline, even researcher to researcher. Although there has been more agreement when it comes to this area of study, it's just important to remember throughout this book that this is how she got the research, the concepts, and the basis on what she's writing. The definitions and explanations in this book are not one and only way, but just a framework to work off of. She says, "I want this book to be an atlas for all of us, because I believe that with an adventurous heart and the right maps, we can travel anywhere and never fear losing ourselves, even when we don't know where we are. In most of my books, I've shared the line, I am a map maker and a traveler. It's my way of telling you that I don't have the answers. I have data, and I use that data to chart a course that I'm sharing with you and trying to navigate at the same time. I don't have it figured out, and most of my research has surprised me and kicked my ass. This research has also taught me that there are times when I can't even offer you a map. I simply don't have access to some of the places you've been and many of the places you'll need to go. This is one of those times. For this work, we are all the map makers and the travelers. There are two ways to make a map: actual exploration to collect your own data, and using data provided by other people. We are meaning makers, and a sense of place is central to meaning making. Where am I? How did I get here from there? How do I get there from here?" So this is the idea that this book is built upon: a theoretical and researched emotional and experiential map for humans to understand and expand upon their own pathways and journeys. She goes on to say, "But rather than elevation and roads and water, human emotions and experiences are layers of biology, biography, behavior, and backstory. As you make your way through this book, you'll see that in order to recognize, name, and make sense of our feelings and experiences, we have to, number one, understand how they show up in our bodies and why, the biology. 2, get curious about how our families and communities shape our beliefs, about the connection between our feelings, thoughts, and behavior, the biography. 3, examine our go-to behaviors. And 4, recognize the context of what we're feeling or thinking. What brought this on, the backstory. These are the questions that help us make meaning in our lives." I remember the first time that I read this book was the first time that I actually put thought into questions like those that the author asks. It made me wonder, what emotions can I even name? What emotions can I define? Do I know how to differentiate closely related emotions and experiences? And most of all, do I have the language to express my emotions? And the language to express the nuances of emotions that feel similar? And as someone who often finds themselves stuck in their head quite a lot and stuck in feeling a feeling, but not able to explain it as accurately and eloquently as I want to, this book has been a great guiding resource in my own journey to improve that skill. I often feel myself wanting to pull this other person who I trust and want to connect with into my reality and what I'm feeling, and if I don't say it exactly how I'm feeling it, it almost makes me feel more lonely and defeated. Obviously some perfectionism that I have to handle, you don't have to say it, I know it, but we're not getting into that. One step at a time. But if this sounds similar to you, having an emotions wheel or feelings wheel to look at could be helpful as well, as we're trying to put language to feeling in this book. You can just look them up online. They're really everywhere and there's a lot of different ones. It's a more simplistic way to identify what emotion you're experiencing if you're having trouble identifying and labeling emotions. But anyways, all this to say, language is powerful, emotions are powerful, and the combination of the two can dynamically cultivate a sense of self-confidence and empowerment, which is life-changing for healing, growth, change, and connection. Next time, we're going to tackle the official first chapter of Atlas of the Heart, named Places We Go When Things Are Uncertain or Too Much. Stress, overwhelm, anxiety, worry, avoidance, excitement, dread, fear, and vulnerability. I'll see you then.